I'm gonna be happy, happy today. I'm gonna be happy, happy today.
Life is full of grief to the extent we allow ourselves to love other people. A beautiful quote I found, which I believe it reflects exactly the meaning of grief. We all have lost people we dearly loved. It's normal, it's part of the life process and is inevitable. But how do we cope with it? How do we move on and live a normal life? Today I have decided to speak with Hayley about grief and what it meant to her when she lost both her parents at a very young age. Hayley, I can't even begin to imagine the pain you have felt when you lost your parents. To me, I believe losing your parents or a child is the worst thing that can happen in life. How did you cope with it straight after it happened?
So I lost my dad 13 years ago and my mum 6 years ago, and I feel like I dealt with them very, very differently. I learned a lot from when my dad passed. So when Dad died, it was he was diagnosed with cancer in the August, and we were told that he was going to be gone by his 70th birthday, and in actual fact he died on his actual 60th birthday. So that's 10 years less than what we were, so it was horrible. It was very, very quick, and he deteriorated very, very quickly, from what was supposed to be a routine scan turned into bowel cancer, and then that moved on to his liver. After that happened, I was basically there for my mum. I was like her rock, because my other two siblings aren't local, so it was basically down to me to sort out moving all the bills across, because a lot of the stuff was in his name and he just didn't have time to organise everything. I also threw myself into work. I did a lot of work up in Scotland just to sort of distract myself, but the problem with that is I didn't allow myself the time to grieve. So within about 6 to 8 months I literally had a breakdown. I had to go to the doctors and get signed off. It was not a good time for me. I put on a lot of weight. I eat when I'm sad. I kind of eat when I'm happy, but I eat when I'm sad, So when my mum passed 6 years ago, although this was also cancer, we did have a bit more time to prepare things, and knowing from experience how much it took when my dad died, obviously it was going to be a lot more with her because it was going to be the selling of the house, etc, etc. So once she had passed, I arranged with work, who were so massively supportive, to have a sabbatical. So I went off for 8 months, and in that time it allowed me the breathing space to get myself together, and actually grieve properly. Obviously it took a lot to sort out a house and everything else like that, but it did allow me to go away a little bit, spend time with friends and family, which is so important. Like when you go through something like that, it is so important not to just shut yourself away and actually just talk about things. And obviously there's no right or wrong way to grieve.
In theory, time is the best healer, but how long did you need to come back to a normal life and feel like yourself again?
Okay, so although I will agree that time is a really good healer, I believe that if you love someone as much as you love like your parents or your children or your best friend, it'll never really be gone, and there's always going to be times where you do get sad, like the inevitable, like birthdays, anniversaries, that sort of thing. But for me, it's little things like, for example, if I'm going out, if I'm shopping and I'll see something and I'll be like, oh, Mum would really like that, and then I'm like, oh no, wait, she won't, because she can't. And it just
sort of forget for the moment that she's not with you anymore.
You do, and it sort of hits you, and it's really hard. Or if you are if you're out and about and you're, say, in a pub and then a song comes on, and it might not necessarily be something that you can directly like link to them, but the words might like resonate with you, and it might just suddenly hit you. And yeah, it is really, really hard. Obviously, like in the first few months afterwards, it was horrible, and I was crying every day, and it was like proper ugly crying. It wasn't nice. It was just really hard. And now, most days I'm okay. I do obviously think about them all the time because they were such massive parts of my life, and I was really fortunate to be close to both of them. But yeah, I do get by now, and the best thing for me is to just keep talking about them and keep their memory alive.
But is it true that once you lose your parents, you feel like a part of you is gone and will be incomplete forever?
Yeah, definitely, because they were there. I saw them every single day, and if for any reason I didn't see them, I'd be texting them or messaging them. Good and bad things happening, I'd be wanting to phone them, but I just couldn't because it just isn't a thing. Like sometimes now I'm like, oh, something's happy's happened, I really want to just tell my mum, and I can't, and that it breaks your heart sometimes.
Did you have to seek medical help after you've lost your parents?
So I didn't think I did at the beginning, but then obviously I had the mini breakdown, as I mentioned earlier. I realised that I needed help, so I went to the doctors. They signed me off for 6 weeks and gave me antidepressants. They didn't work for me. I think it's because I'm a little impatient, so I like to think that things are going to happen instantly, and obviously they don't because, well, grief is such a massive thing. So instead of that, I saw a grief counsellor through the company Cruise. They're free, and they are in most towns. They're really, really good. I definitely would suggest talking to someone, and it helps talking to someone that you're not close with, that doesn't know your situation. Macmillan nurses are especially brilliant as well, obviously if it's cancer related. Because you can talk to them about anything and you don't feel like you're burdening anyone.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned you lost some friends as well, not just your parents.
Yeah, so I have sadly lost a few friends to suicide, and obviously that's a very, very different type of grief because it is sudden, and nobody was expecting it. And the other thing that made it different is because it wasn't family members. It felt almost that I wasn't supposed to be, or I wasn't allowed to grieve as much. Like you didn't feel entitled to because they weren't like there every day. But obviously, friends are sometimes like family, and it is horrible because it is part of your life, and there are always going to be them memories. So it is about, I think, finding your own way to grieve and not feeling bad about grieving. Sometimes we might hear of a work colleague passing, for example. I lost a work colleague last year. We weren't like massively close. We would chat at work. We did have a relationship. But then again, I did feel a little bit like, oh, should I be feeling like this? But actually, there are no rules with grief.
Yeah, you feel what you feel.
Exactly. And sometimes some people feel it more than others. I am one of these people that sadly I feel a lot, and I can't help it. And
it's no bad thing.
Yeah.
It's no bad thing.
But yeah, just talk to people and just find your own way, really.
What can you advise those who are grieving right now, who are going through this horrible pain right now? And is it anything that made it easier for you?
Okay, so one thing that I did for both my parents, which I found so helpful, and even to this day I will go back to this book. I created a memory book. So each page is a different memory. Some of them could be big memories, like a certain Christmas. Some of them could be tiny little things, or especially for my mum, sorry mum, but she had a lot of blonde moments. Like, she did a lot of silly things, and anyone that knew her would definitely agree with that. And I just put them in there, oh, that time that you did this. And I do it as if I'm talking to them, so it's a bit like in letter form. And for both their funerals, I found the best way to do, like, to talk about them was to write them a letter as if I was talking to them. And sometimes it really helps because it does feel like you are talking to them, and you can imagine what their response would be. And it's really important to also think, yes, all right, it's horrible, it's really bad, this awful thing's happened to me, but actually you can't let it ruin the rest of your life. That was your past. Your future is really important, and they would want you to be happy, and they would want to see you like living your best life. Sorry to be cliched there, but like, it absolutely breaks my heart that my dad he never got to meet Austin. Like, he died before Austin was born, and Austin sometimes like goes around and it's really silly, but he pulls his pants up right up to here, and he's like, oh, I'm wearing granddad pants, because I used to say my dad used to do that. And even though he never met him, he's like, he lives in him because he's got the same silly sense of humour. And although sometimes it does like choke you a little bit, it's really nice, and I think that they'd both be proud of me, and that's what you've got to go with, really. And yeah, just cherish their memory, and yeah, write them down. And if you're struggling, just ask friends and family of theirs, and just say, look, have you got any memories of this person, so I can put them in my book? And you don't have to share it with people, but you can if you want to, because it is lovely to look through. Obviously photos and stuff, keep them around. Don't be afraid to bring them up in conversation. Some people are a bit awkward sometimes because they're like, oh, that person's died, but actually, why shouldn't
It's a lot for you in your
yeah,
heart.
they've done so much for you. Why shouldn't they be cherished?
Thank you, Hayley.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be happy, happy today. I'm gonna be happy, happy